In this episode, we're going to go over one of the most important aspects of actually managing anxiety in the moment as an athlete. Hey there, I'm Eli Straw, mental performance coach and the founder of SuccessStarterThin.com. Now, sports performance anxiety is one of the main mental game challenges that I help athletes overcome in one-on-one mental coaching. Now, if you are interested in learning more about one-on-one coaching, I've put a link to that in the description below. But when we are working on managing this anxiety, we take a long-term approach, right, where we're wanting to work through the different thought patterns that are leading to the anxiety, but we also are thinking about how can they think differently and what can they do going into their next competition to help remove a lot of the anxiety that they experience. Now, personally, as a baseball player back in college, I was extremely anxious before every single game. And something that I ended up doing was, because I was anxious, I would then stress about how I needed to get rid of my anxiety. Number one, because the anxiety was very uncomfortable, right? I got the nervous feeling in my stomach, my legs would shake, I would get dizzy. It wasn't a very fun feeling to have to experience. But on top of that, I knew how hurtful this anxiety was to my actual ability to perform. The great games that I had did not come when I was anxious. They came when I was confident. Unfortunately, back then, I didn't really know how to get myself to be confident. All I knew was that, okay, when I feel this way, which was anxious, I underperform. That led to more stress. That led to more worry. That led to more of this feeling like I have to force and figure out how do I get rid of this anxiety because I can't play when I feel this way. But that then created this loop where I would feel a little anxiety about the upcoming game, but then I would get 10 times more anxious about the fact that I was anxious, so my anxiety itself was driving more anxiety because that's what I was worried about. And this is something I see in a lot of different athletes that I work with. And there was actually somebody that I was talking to this morning, and we were talking about this very same idea. Because she is stressed this upcoming weekend and getting anxious about this upcoming weekend's competition because she's worried about whether or not she'll be able to manage her nerves like she did the last competition she had. So when we see that this anxiety, right, this worry about anxiety itself is one of the major causes of anxiety when you compete, what we see is that the best thing for us to be able to do is figure out how do we let go of this anxiety about being anxious. Now, that's admittedly a very difficult thing to do, right? Because you as an athlete know that if you have played with this performance anxiety and this worry, this nervousness, you know that you typically don't perform your best. There are many reasons why performance anxiety causes athletes to underperform, but we're going to see tense play when you're anxious. We're going to see distracted play when you're anxious. We're going to see timid play when you're anxious, right? Because you might end up being afraid of making mistakes, so then you hold yourself back. We will see second guessing, hesitating. In other words, we're not going to see free and confident play when you're out there playing with anxiety because you're so worried about what will happen. So yes, anxiety itself does lower performance. But most of the time, it's not the anxiety itself that's lowering the performance. It is the stress about the fact we're anxious, which then creates more stress, more over control. Then we're trying to change how anxious we are. We're trying to fix it. And then that's what then leads to this tension, this worry, this stress when we actually perform. So this brings me to the number one way that you right now can make a change within your performance when it comes to this anxiety. And that word is acceptance. Now, I know that this is an incredibly, incredibly difficult thing for you to do as an athlete, and it takes a lot of work, right? It's not something that is typically changed overnight. Sometimes it can be. But what I mean by this is when you are, when you're going out there and you are about to start a game and you're feeling all this anxiety and you're feeling this worry, you're feeling this stress, the more you try to fight it, the worse it's going to get. Right? For example, back when I was playing baseball, I would get ready to start a game and all I would focus on was the fact that I was anxious. And I desperately wanted to change that. So then I was thinking to myself, all right, well, how am I going to get rid of this nervousness? If I don't get rid of this nervousness, there's no way that I can play well today. But you see how as I'm thinking about that, I'm still thinking about the fact that I'm anxious, that I'm nervous. I'm still thinking about performing poorly. And all those types of thoughts are only driving my anxiety. They're only making it worse. Because at the end of the day, anxiety is caused by our thinking about what will happen in the future. And the more I think about how anxious I am right now, and the more I worry about whether or not I can get rid of this anxiety before the game starts, and then the more I worry about how the anxiety itself will affect my performance, the more anxious I become. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take our attention off of the anxiety and put our attention onto controllables, onto reasons why we have to play well, onto past successes that we've had, right? Onto our breathing just to help us be more present. We're trying to put our attention onto something more productive and helpful, but we cannot do that while we're still trying to resist and fight this anxiety. And that is why acceptance is so important. Now, when I'm talking about acceptance, this is an active process that you have to go through in the moment, but it is also something that you can practice days leading into a competition. And it simply looks like this. You notice that you're anxious and you tell yourself, it's okay, I accept that I'm anxious. I know that I'm feeling nervous. That's perfectly fine. I can play well even though I'm anxious. Now what do I need to focus on? All right, so we are taking away resistance to the anxiety because there's not really much we can do about forcing that anxiety away, right? Because like I said, the more we think about that anxiety, the worse it's getting. So really, the only way to let the anxiety go away in that moment is to focus more on the controllable parts of your game, to focus on your breathing, to use positive self-talk, maybe use a little visualization, focus on the process goals that you have set for yourself. Now, can you focus on any of those things if you're trying to resist the anxiety? No. Right? So you have to accept the fact that the anxiety is there in the first place to remove resistance to the anxiety, which then frees up your attention to be able to focus on something else. And that's why you heard me in that kind of conversation I was having with myself. I ended it by saying, what do I want to focus on now that will help me play well, right? What can I focus on next? What can I focus on that's in my control? So acceptance of anxiety is an idea. It's an idea that we know anxiety will not be forced away by us trying to get rid of it. Anxiety will be changed and reduced by us taking our attention off of those worries, right? Off of the things that are creating the anxiety and driving it in the first place, which anxiety itself ends up being a main thing that's driving the anxiety for us. So we are accepting the anxiety to remove resistance, tell ourselves, it's okay, it's perfectly fine that I'm anxious, but now what do I want to focus on? Right? And then we turn our attention onto the controllable parts of our game, onto the process goals, onto our breathing to help us be present, onto positive self-talk to build confidence in ourselves. But we can only do that once we accept the fact that we are anxious. And to be honest with you, there are, multiple different tools that I use within one-on-one coaching that help athletes. But acceptance is probably the one that once an athlete truly understands it and truly starts to use it, we begin to see the most significant improvement, whether it's accepting the possibility of mistakes, accepting anxiety, whatever it ends up being. But, when we take away a lot of resistance, we free ourselves up to just be present. When we are present, we perform our best. The more you try to over-control the result of the game, the more you try to control whether or not you're going to be anxious, the more tense you'll be, the less free you'll perform. So just accept the fact that you're anxious, right? Do that through talking to yourself, have that conversation with yourself. And then once you say, okay, I accept that I'm anxious, now let's focus on those controllables. Turn your attention onto what you need to be focused on to keep yourself present and to help yourself build confidence. And above all else, just to enjoy the performance and be in the moment throughout the competition. Now, if you are interested in learning more about a more in-depth approach to managing your anxiety as an athlete, like I said earlier, I do offer one-on-one coaching, but I also have a self-paced online course that walks you through how you can go from feeling anxious and afraid to play all the way to playing freely and confidently as an athlete. And I have a link to that in the description below as well. It's called the Confident Competitor Academy. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or any of the sports psychology programs I have available, I've put links to those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.